What one mistake ended your career? Not exactly a career, but I worked in a fast food spot that didn't have any air conditioning. And Teresa workers' law where I live that states once it gets to a certain temp in the building they legally can't stay open. I brought a thermometer to work. Fuckers should be thanking you for helping them stay in compliance. There's an old statement I remember hearing: everyone loves firemen. Everyone loathes the inspector, that pairs well with the other statement. Safety regulations are often written in blood, which kinda encapsulates how many people out there think about things like preventative maintenance. All it takes sometimes is for someone to die from something completely preventable to make sure a rule is followed, and that people never value the people that call this stuff out early. It creates more work, and I have all these other important things to do. They cry, but then they turn around and glorify the people that have to respond in a crisis as the heroes for saving them from themselves. This isn't to say firefighters don't deserve it, they absolutely fucking do, but so do the people that call out stuff that can go sideways before it happens to give you a chance to fix it first. Everyone loathes the inspector. I'm a health inspector. Restaurant employees not liking me is understandable, although good owners' employees are respectful and understanding. But the general public hating me was a surprise. I'm out making sure food is safe to eat, but when I close down a restaurant because it isn't sanitary, people get downright hateful. Yet when they think they get sick from eating somewhere, then where's the first place they call? Oh yeah, also us. Edit. I'm only editing to add a thank you to all the support people have shown. I am appreciative of so many Redditors appreciating me and my profession. I truly wish more of you were vocal in the real world, because we rarely hear anything but negativity. Even if I seldom hear that you value our work, I am glad to know that it isn't unnoticed. Be safe, everyone. I sent a scathing email about my boss directly to my boss. It wasn't meant for him. To this day I still have no idea what possessed me to put his name in the address bar. I noticed his name the exact moment I hit send. You have never felt that much panic. I set my emails to delay being sent for 10 seconds after hitting the send button. It's been useful many times. I use 2 minutes. Not taking chances, lol. I use 2 weeks. It prevents a lot of problems, but admittedly causes some, too. Called the HR lady the angel of death to a coworker on chat. HR was in a different state, so anytime they came to town we all knew it was most likely to lay off people. Angel of death came to get me shortly after. Lady got mad and only proved you right, Lamau. Her rep was at stake. It was either take Yumashodra 2 down or become known as the Angel of Hour. Won't survive on the streets with some softy name like that, lol. A guy I worked with was caught stealing 2 cigarettes from a colleague's bag. Was on a 6-figure salary. Not anymore. How can anybody be so dumb? Especially as a smoker, he should be aware how other smokers are very likely to share their cigarettes with you if you just ask them. I bet he's that asshole who asks for cigs all the time and never shares any of his own. That's how you become a millionaire. I was a part-time intern making $9 an hour, USD, and my boss asked if I had any plans for the weekend. I had said I was going to buy a new car, very much old and used as that's what I could afford, and he asked if I was buying a brand new car. My response was that my budget isn't big enough for a new car, and a couple weeks later during my 1-year review my manager said they didn't have the work for me and that I was disrespectful for telling the boss I didn't make enough money. At the time I was living comfortably as a college student, just needed different transportation. I tried not to be disrespectful, but apparently I was. You didn't make a mistake at all. Your boss was being a prick. How would you be buying a new car on $9 an hour? He knew how much you were getting paid and chose to ask you about a major financial decision. Screw that guy. Hey, do you make enough to buy a car? No. Well, fuck you too. The correct answer was, thank you for my pittance, generous and noble employer. Browsing for another job while at the job. That's why you do it on your phone using your own mobile data. So you're saying that if I search big beautiful butts on my mobile via my company's Wi-Fi that my IT guy knows how I get down? Asking for a friend. No, he'll allow it. Sent an email to someone I thought was helping me. Threw me under the bus. Same thing here. Stood up for myself one too many times. Texted a coworker about this and some shared concerns he had also talked about with me. Coworker showed already angry boss my text. Bye-bye job and career. Never put anything in writing that can be used against you later. I've always heard this, not coincidentally from in-house counsels, as don't put anything in writing that you wouldn't feel comfortable having read out loud in court. Usually this is brought up after Slack, or Teams, org chat, channels get particularly rowdy. I'm sure people think I'm no fun for doing it, but unless it's a private phone call I've made it a habit of replying to work Slack gossip attempts with a haha at most these days. Had a workplace accident, fall from height. Didn't get fired but broke enough bones that I'll never work in that industry again. Same. Carpenter in the film industry. On the set of Supernatural. Last day of season 12 before hiatus. We build a house on location. Fell from that roof. Shattered my heel. Can't do the 12+ hour days that is the standard in the industry. 12-year career gone in flames. Just like that. Fuyu, I shattered both of my heels back in 2001. I was told I'd never be a runner. Did my first ultramarathon last year and plan on more. I will say I have to be extremely proactive with injury prevention and strength training. But it's worth it. Didn't happen to me, but I remember a coworker of mine getting fired because he put laxatives in his own lunch bag. Some dickhead kept stealing parts of our lunches. Turned out, it was our supervisor. Edit, Jesus Christ. That's a lot of upvotes. Edit 2. I'm not too keen on the specifics since that coworker and I weren't exactly friends or anything. Just kind of had simple conversations during lunch and whatnot. Apparently it is illegal to poison food with malicious intent. And some of my friends who worked there said he got into some legal trouble because of it. Nothing came of it from what I heard. But that's about all I know. Imagine stealing someone food and fired him. Yeah, that's shitty, no pun intended. It's illegal to do because of allergy stuff, I'm sure. I would have made the case that I needed those laxatives and was backed up. Yup. You should make it super spicy instead. That's way more defensible than laxatives. Getting promoted to supervisor started the dominoes falling. I worked at a prison. I had been there for about 7 years and I knew I was most qualified. So I applied for the open sergeant's position. I got it, which is where this story starts. As a sergeant, it was my job to do investigations and document the findings whenever an inmate alleged his life was in danger. I would do the investigation and do a report on my findings, and it would get sent to the warden for them to interpret the evidence and make a final decision. So, one day, an inmate gets beat up on a building I was in charge of. This inmate had never spoken to me, and had never told anyone he was having friction with his cellmate. Well, when questioned about it, the inmate said he had told me he needed to be moved and I told him I would. Initially, my supervisors believed him, but after I pulled up the surveillance camera that showed I had never even gotten down to that area that night due to being on a mission from another one of my supervisors all night, they admitted I hadn't talked to him. However, the higher-ups needed someone to blame, and because it was my area, I got the blame, and got fired. As a side note, I was salty about getting fired because I cared about my job but I wouldn't go back if they begged me. I have a much better job now and the prison is so short-staffed because of how they treat their people. The officers are stuck doing 16-hour days. 6 days a week. No, thank you. Edit. Fuck it. What are they gonna do? This was the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I have heard that being a prison guard is an absolutely terrible experience. Low pay, dangerous, full of disease, and you spend your life in prison. My dad was a prison guard in college. He was going to stay there and not even go to college. But the job is what made him go back to college because he knew he couldn't do it for long. Shitty life pro tip to struggling students: drop out of college and get the shittiest job you can to motivate you to reapply to college and get good grades. I was opening my packages in the mailroom, using a pocket knife to slice open the package tape. Secretary came in and chatted. We're both Italian so we gesture a lot while talking. Sometime after the conversation, the ops manager came down from his office and escorted me out of the building. Had forgotten the knife in my hand while talking with the secretary and she made an accusation that I had threatened her with it during our conversation. Was fired 3 days later. I had worked with this woman for almost a decade, helped her children with their homework, etc. Years later I learned corporate wanted to take down my boss, and started the process by going after his biggest supporters. I was the third domino to fall. After I was railroaded, almost 40% of the branch's staff left the company. I guess the secretary was in on it, and leapt at any excuse to take me out. Shame. Really loved that job, and got fired when my first child was due in only 4 weeks. Was very demoralizing for quite a while. I still have a few contacts left at that company. She was fired around the start of the pandemic. This news was pleasing. I sided with the peeps under me as their manager. Doo-woot, I feel this one. It hasn't ended my career, but siding with people under me versus people over me has definitely stymied my upward mobility. It's more important to have the back of the people you represent. In my experience, you get better production out of people who know you go to bat for them. Then your numbers and team performance look good and they figure, well, he must be doing something right. This only works if the higher-ups actually value results based on data. In my experience, this isn't always the case. Lifting wrong. 14 years of arboriculture coming to an end now. Not sure of the next job. 14 years might be enough to move into a supervisory managerial role if one exists in the field. It would allow you to still utilize your experience to some degree. I'm British living in France with an intermediate level French, so that makes this a bit tricky. Also, I've never really been into working in an office and there aren't many big companies over here. I feel it's time for a change. Best of luck to you. Then. Not me, but my best friend. He found a stash of porn on a network computer that belonged to the boss, then showed it to everyone. Ended up working in a supermarket after that, and said half the people there had criminal records. Simple rules. 1. Don't look at porn at work. 2. If you find porn at work, no, you didn't. IT exists for a reason and they will take care of it. If they don't, it's still not your concern. Haha. Rule 1 is very important. I'm in IT and years ago one of my colleagues remoted into an operator's desktop and he was not only watching porn. He had brought his own DVDs because obviously there was a corporate firewall. One screenshot got him fired really fast. As someone who works in IT, I don't care what you're doing. I care when HR and legal start asking me to care. So if no one catches you watching porn, I didn't see anything. We've probably blocked inappropriate sites already anyway. Same's true of social media. Or, well, whatever really. If your boss, and HR and legal, don't care, then neither do I. Just take it easy with the bandwidth hogs. I don't want my network knocked down by someone being an idiot with BitTorrent or similar. By which I mean the legal for an adult to own sort of kind, not the nasty stuff. Kind of the opposite. I worked at a second-hand electronics store. A dude came in with a PS2 to sell. I noticed the serial number was scratched off and thought that was a concern, but processed it anyway. It went through testing. Came back greenlit and I assumed that meant that it was okay. Assumed wrong. Management sacked my ass an hour later. Went home, reevaluated my life choices, and that year went back to college. Got my A-levels, then my degree, and now I've been a software engineer for almost 10 years. What would the problem be if the serial number was scratched off? That it was stolen? There was a database we could check against for stolen goods. That required that number to check against. So if it had been reported stolen we would be able to tell. I think there was another reason we kept the numbers but I don't recall what it was now. Stock tracking? Maybe? Boss should have at least given you a warning telling you what you did wrong. I did a PhD. Now I can't get hired anywhere. The irony, workplaces are no longer impressed by bachelors. So you do a master's or a PhD for another 35 plus years. Then they turn around and say you need more experience, or that you're overqualified. You just can't win. Overqualification is basically shorthand for we know you're smart and you're gonna want to be paid a reasonable amount of money. So we don't want you. Edit. There's a lot of replies conveniently forgetting that people need money to live lol. Yes, people will want to get temporary jobs until they find something better. That's how this country is built. It's systemic. Quit blaming the people looking for jobs. To be fair, it's also shorthand for why the fuck are you even applying for this job? You're going to bail in 12 months. I was involved with the secretary. We thought we were both discreet, but everyone knew. Edit. To clarify, we had a policy that said coworkers cannot engage in relationships. We broke the rules. I hated the place and took all the blame. Yo, keep her from getting canned too. It wasn't a full-blown relationship yet. We were just starting out. Also, that's all people did was gossip about stuff that was none of their business. At a previous place of work, uni, there were two married postdocs in their late 20s who it turned out were having an affair with each other. No kids involved. It was already obvious that neither were well married. And no problems I heard of at work once the relationship became known, since they were at the same level in the organization but in different groups. What was funny about it was how some of us, their colleagues, found out. A group of us, not including the two having the affair, went for a trip to some hills that were about a 45-minute drive from our workplace. After walking around, we stopped for a drink at a quiet country pub. As I was walking from our pub table to the loo, I spotted the two affair colleagues sat at a table in a secluded corner of the pub, waved to them and carried on to the loo. I went and sat down, kept quiet about what I'd seen, and each time somebody from our table went to the loo I'd watch as they came back with their lips pursed, clearly trying to contain the urge to laugh or gossip. Literally everybody could see what was going on. Finally, one girl came back from the loo, sat down and immediately blurted out, "Did you see Steve and Yasmin over there? What are they up to?" And everybody burst out laughing. Damn, your crew takes snitches get stitches to another level. Yeah, my team would instantly talk about that. I wouldn't even say it's gossip. Just curiosity. Someone would instantly say, "Wonder why Steve and Yasmin are here?" Call center taking a manager call. Put the chap on hold and comforted the team member. He is a bit of an asshole, isn't he? Forgot to also put the call on mute and he requested a call recording. Whoops. Then while on suspension, I broke my leg, and went to my hearing after far too little sleep and too much tramadol. When they asked me what the impact of my actions was, I said it was crippling. Far too pleased with that pun to give a fuck about the outcome. Spent the next few months coasting through bills selling bits and bats, eventually got into marketing. A win in the long run. Upvote for the pun. I was the assistant director at a summer camp. One of the very last nights was a sleepover night where all of the campers were there, but not all of the regular day staff. 2 of the counselors were caught drinking beer, and in an attempt to weasel his way out, one of them told the head of the camp that I gave him permission to do so. I most definitely had not. While I didn't get fired on the spot or have my year-end bonus withheld like the other 2, I was told I wouldn't be asked back again for next year, where there had already been talks of me being a full director in the future. People who instantly believe the words of people breaking the rules are the biggest idiots. Talked about comp to another employee. They told the manager about it. Got fired. The good part is it's illegal and the idiot created a paper trail around it. They settled out of court for way more than they would have saved by people not talking about comp. Your work friends are not your true friends. A fucking man. People I worked with for years, and hung out with after hours regularly, ghosted me until I started reading their rebuttals full of outright lies in our settlement negotiations. I'll never know if it was actually them or fabrication by the other side's attorney. I worked in public relations agencies for quite a long time, and mostly hated every minute of it. I didn't really understand what I was doing, but felt trapped in the business because I couldn't think of anything else I'd be able to do. I got into it because around 2010 social media was just becoming a big thing and old school PR agencies would hire anybody who knew anything about Twitter, Facebook and all these exciting new channels. Pretty much all I had to do was show up to meetings and enthusiastically explain what social media was to confused old business dinosaurs. So even though I knew nothing about PR and didn't really understand how agencies work, I quickly got overpromoted and for the first time in my life found I was in high demand. So I was getting paid more money than ever before. However, eventually social wasn't seen as such a big deal anymore. So I found myself just trying to do whatever work they threw at me, hoping I could keep hold of that sweet salary for a little longer. But because I wasn't into the job at all, I was always procrastinating, and I'd pull late nights to get work done at the last minute. One day my boss asked to see my progress on a big client presentation that wasn't due for another week. I literally hadn't done a single thing on it, and I tried to bluster my way out of it. But the shit hit the fan and I got fired. Overnight I found I could no longer get interviews at agencies that used to be desperate for social media experts to work for them, and really started to worry about how I'd find another job. In the end it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Because out of desperation I took a temporary 3-month contract to do some basic marketing stuff at a small tech company, and before my contract expired the company got bought by a bigger company. They decided they needed a marketing director for my region, and because I was sitting in the right chair at the time, I got promoted and given a permanent contract. I was given plenty of time and space to figure out how to do the job as the company grew, so I felt much more comfortable in the role, not like I was constantly making it up as I went along. In their 7 years, loved the job and the people, and earned more money than I ever thought I would. I love how everyone in this thread got shit canned or snaked by a coworker and you fell us backwards into success twice. That's not the half of it. I grew up in a train wreck of a family. Borderline poverty to the point that I was on a watch list for social services because of concerns for my well-being. Left school at 16, having failed all of my exams, desperate to get away from my insane home life. I'm sure nobody expected a kid like me to get any kind of happy ending. But I was always a geek, loved reading, loved video games. By sheer dumb luck there was a company near where I lived that published video games magazines, back in the days when print magazines were still big, and I applied for a job as an office junior there without really knowing what they did. I was waiting to get into the army, but figured this job would pay a little money while I was waiting to go through the recruitment process and get sent off to basic training. After a couple of months of filling the coffee machine and tidying the place up, I convinced one of the editors to read an article I'd written. They pretty much instantly gave me a junior staff writer job, which led to a 10-year career in tech video game journalism. That eventually fell apart during the dot-com bust, when a lot of those old print magazines went out of business and nobody had quite figured out how to make publishing online pay yet. That was when I got into PR, because in my last writing gig I'd been covering the internet and social media, which made me an expert in their eyes. So I've been failing upwards ever since I was 16. You magnificent bastard. A guy I knew got fired for sleeping with the boss's daughter. Nothing dodgy, entirely above board. He didn't even know they were related and had never met her before. They met on a night out. He went back to her parents' place and they had sex. No problems, no drama, etc. The next morning they got dressed and she was showing him to the door when her dad, his boss, walked out of the kitchen. Emo, that's pretty fucked up. They were consenting adults. He had no idea it was his boss's daughter. No significant age difference. She wasn't wasted or anything. She'd never worked at, or as far as I know even visited, the company when my friend was there or even met him. This is one of the plot points of 22 Jump Street. Schmidt fucked the boss's daughter. I still love this. It's so fucking dumb and it gets me every time.